Hey everyone, it's great to see you. My name's Ian and I'm here today to talk to you about soil and the characteristics of soil. You may be wondering why I'm sitting in a forest. Well, this is often where one component of soil starts. There's also other components that make up soil or make up the formation of soil. Some of that is often on rocks on top of a mountain. And particularly part of the formation of soil, it comes down to water. These are all important components. The first component is made up of living things. So things like forests make up what's called the top layer or the organic layer. And then when we have rocks that get weathered away or eroded, they make up what's called the mineral layer. So soil's often made up of two different things. Parts from living material and then parts from non-living material. And it all gets mixed up together. This is really important when we understand what we see when we dig in the ground and what the plants and animals require when they're using soil. So for a plant to survive, it needs to put its roots into the soil, and from the soil it gets minerals and it gets water from the soil. But it gets its structure from carbon, which it absorbs out of the air. Now when plants die, they break down and they form part of the soil, and that's what's forming the organic layer or the soil that's made from living things. The mineral layer is made from when rocks break down. So what do you think breaks down rocks? I've already given you a clue this lesson. You can write it down if you want to. That's right, water is a big part of breaking down rocks. Not only water, but we also have wind and other rocks, just physical activity banging together. Also sometimes it's chemicals, so it's chemical breakdown. So the air reacting with rocks breaks down rocks, and that rock that gets broken down makes part of the mineral layer. So usually what happens, the organic layer sits on top and the mineral layer is underneath, because most of the living things that have die and they form this layer on the very top, and then they sit on top of all the broken down rocks that are underneath, and we often get some mixing between these two layers. So these different layers have different characteristics. The mineral layer, which is made up of broken down rock, is, as you guessed it, a bit more rocky. It's often made up of lots of little rocks. And the organic layer is a bit more mudgy. It's often darker and it's made up of tree roots, leaves, animal poo, dead animals, dead tree trunks, all sorts of things like that. Now, the characteristics change depending on what type of rocks have made up the mineral layer and what type of organic material have made up the organic layer. So it depends on the type of rocks that got broken down on this level will change what the mineral layer looks like. And then the type of vegetation that's around at the top is what's going to change what the top part or the organic layer looks like. And then these two get a bit mixed up a lot of the time. So we get all sorts of different soils depending on the rock it's been sitting on and the organic layer or the living material that was sitting on top of that rock. So as you drive around Tasmania or go to different places, you'll see that the soil changes. Sometimes that's because people have brought soil in, but other times it's just because of the rock underneath your feet is different to the rock where you were before. And so it's really important that you can dig down and have a look, or look at places where you can see the type of rock that's in that area. So if you've ever been to Freycinet and seen the Hazards Mountains, you'll know that they look a little bit different to, say, Mount Wellington. And they were the rocks I had on the picture behind me before. They're Mount Wellington rocks. So each rock type comes up with different soil types, different mineral layers. So it's important for us to have a think about what the definition of soil is as well. So one definition of soil is a mixture of organic material, minerals, gases and liquids, and organisms that together support life. The Earth's body of soil is called the pedosphere, and it has some important functions. It acts as water storage, it acts as a medium for plants to grow in. It actually does modify the Earth's atmosphere a little bit because all sorts of gases actually come out of the soil as things break down, or as that organic layer breaks down. And it's actually habitat for little animals like worms and beetles and spiders, all sorts of things like that. So it actually is an important thing just to provide homes for animals. So, something you can do while you're at home. There's a couple of different activities. If you have a backyard, you can actually go outside, if it's not raining like it is today, or even if it is, and actually dig down in the soil there. Now, check with your parents first, because they might not want you digging holes in their lawn. But if it's okay, you can just dig a little hole, and I want you to see if you can find the two types. So the top part is going to be the organic layer. It's usually darker, okay? Now, if there's been lots and lots of rain, or if you live in the area, you might not have an organic layer. It just might be rock, and that's okay. It's just that area just has either straight rock or just a mineral layer and no organic layer on top. Remember, the organic layer is made up of dead living things that are broken down. So if you go out to your backyard, you can have a dig, and you might, if you're in a foresty area, you might scrape away leaves and bark and twigs at first, and then you can dig in, and then I want you to see if you can dig down and you get to a mineral layer. And so you can notice that the texture changes, it might change colour, it might feel differently, it might be all gritty once you reach the mineral layer. And that means you've dug through the organic layer and you've reached a mineral layer. The mineral layer might be a long way down. You may not be able to reach it, but you'll at least be able to go out and dig and go, oh yeah, I'm digging in the organic layer, and it'll feel softer, it's finer, and there's often little twigs and things like that in it, and plant roots. So I want you to see if you can identify the organic layer and the mineral layer. Now, if you can't do that, if you can't go outside, or you only have concrete around your house, the other thing, and you'll have to check with your parents again, but an activity you could do at home is you could use some cooking material and make an organic layer. So you can get a jar, and actually you could actually practice making these different layers. So ask mum or dad, and what they've got that's kind of gritty, that you could try and make a mineral layer here. And something that's smoother, that maybe you could use flour, or something that's less gritty, or something that's gritty could be something like sugar, so you could fill a small layer up with sugar and represent the mineral layer, and the other one should be finer and darker and maybe have some twigs in it, and you can have it in a jar, and you could take a photo of it and you could send that photo to Mrs. Lynch, pointing out which one is the mineral layer and which one is the organic layer. So you've got two activities you can do. You can go outside, and when you do go out, if you do go outside, you can take a photo of the hole you've dug and point out in your photo as you upload it which one's the organic layer and which one's the mineral layer. Or you can do the jar activity, and you can go, this one's meant to be the organic layer where all the living things have broken down, and the other one, which is the mineral layer, where the rocks have broken down, the non-living things. And you can just make a little sort of food sample representing your soil. So once you've done those things, That will be your science activity for the day. And next week we're going to look at some other science activities too. Something we'll get to talk about is, if you look at the photo behind me, is, anyone know what that's called? It's a fossil. And fossils are other things that we find in the soil or in the rock. And so next week we'll probably talk about how fossils might form and how they're related to soil, and how the different types, you only find fossils in certain types of rocks, because there's different types of rocks. So we'll mention that next week. Maybe some homework you can do over the weekend is see if you can find out the 3 different types of rocks that exist. I'll give you a hint. One starts with I, the other one starts with M, and the other one, the third one, starts with S. So there's 3 types of rocks that I'll mention to you next week, and I want you to see if you can find out what they are over the weekend. Okay, it's been great talking to you guys. Hopefully this is some new information for you with science and an introduction to soil and the composition of soil for you. We'll look at rocks next week. Have a great weekend. See ya.